Hi everyone, today on the YouTube video we have a really interesting guest in Mark Wright, who is an Apprentice winner in 2014. He has a digital marketing agency called Climb Online and he was a Forbes 30/30. So really interesting. We really delve into some great detail about business and about his businesses, so hopefully you'll enjoy it. Please provide me with any feedback. Love to get your ideas on what went well, what didn't go well. I really enjoyed this and hopefully you will as well. Hi everyone, it's Mark Hayward here with the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. We've got Mark Wright here. I will let Mark do a quick intro of himself.
Hi everybody, so Mark, thank you for having me. My name is Mark Wright, not the one from The Only Way is Essex, as everyone commonly confused me with. I'm the one who won The Apprentice in 2014. I'm the founder and CEO of Climb Online, which I own in partnership with Lord Alan Sugar. I've been listed on Forbes 30 Under 30. I won Entrepreneur of the Year in the UK last year in 2018. And amongst many other things, I own 5 companies, and one of which we're sitting in today.
And it's a lovely office.
Thank
it's
you.
a really lovely office.
It's good for filming. It comes up nice.
It's a very bright white office. Lots of light, so that's brilliant. So thank you again for coming and speaking to me. So just to start off, whoever here who watches The Apprentice, my favourite episode is always when they have to source the items from whatever country or location it is. So Mark, do you still haggle in your local stores?
So the treasure hunt episode is again one of my favourites to watch on TV. It wasn't my favourite to do as a contestant. Let me tell you, it was stressful. You think you know London really well until you have to find a piece of rope or something like this, or a tea bag. Yeah. What The Apprentice taught me is everything's negotiable. Yeah. And I must admit, after coming out of the apprentice process, I tried it on basically everything, saying, give me a deal, let's make a deal, putting your hand out for a handshake. It doesn't work as well when you're not surrounded by TV cameras. But you are surprised if you just ask, if you're talking to the owner of a shop, or you've got a decision maker in front of you and you ask them for a discount, they'll normally give you 5 to 10%.
Yeah, so with this, you try it out in different places. I've tried it out, and I found if you're doing it if you're buying something very basic in a local store, you're going to really struggle to get any sort of discount. Whenever you start then buying in bulk, then suddenly that's where discounts and things I think can be made.
Yeah, or bigger purchases. So bulk purchases, stock purchases, or items like cars. You should never pay full price for building materials, cars, IT equipment. It's always negotiable. The key thing, like I said, in particularly in business, is if you're going to make a purchase, make sure you're talking to someone that can offer you a discount. Yeah. If you're in a store and you're speaking to an employee, they're probably not authorized, but a manager or an owner can definitely help you. Yeah. But I always recommend asking, what's the worst that can happen? You pay the price you're going to pay anyway.
Exactly. And so I've just recently done a property, and so I worked hard on getting that up to spec. Now, interestingly, I've talked about this on the podcast. It was up to spec for a tenant. It wasn't necessarily up to spec what I would like or what I'd like exactly in the house. But in there, I asked for a discount for the building merchants, and they were absolutely flexible on that. And this is the thing. I think you're absolutely right. On certain industries, it works better. Yeah. There's Tim Ferriss says that you should go into your local coffee shop, whether it's a Starbucks or whatever, or a local one, and ask for a cup of coffee for free or a discount, because his idea is that you practice, i.e. you get to ask the question. Whether you pay full price or half price, whatever it is, you're actually just getting used to being told no or being told yes. And I think that's one of the things you kind of need to practice, is getting in those situations and asking those sorts of questions. So even if you are never successful in that, actually just asking the question needs to practice as well.
I totally agree. And I think one of the reasons why we look in the billionaires ranks, and some of the most successful people in the world have all been salespeople. Yeah. Now, the reason, and that's not a coincidence, is because when you get used to handling the rejection that salespeople face early in their career, from cold calling, door knocking, deals going bad, it builds a resilience and a toughness to hearing no or objections. Yeah. And the reason why salespeople then go once you push through that, anything is possible then in business. Yeah. So I totally agree that asking for discounts, asking for a better price, asking for a deal, being rejected is probably one of the best things that can happen to you in a business setting.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about social, marketing and sales, but just to touch on that sales. So did you think when you started your career, we're going to touch a little bit earlier parts, but just on the sales point, did you go into sales with the ambition to make a lot of money, or to get exposure, to get to the right people? What was your initial motivation with sales?
I think some people are naturally comfortable at selling things, and I'm one of those people. I really enjoy the art of getting to sell something to someone. Right. I think it's a very particular skill set. I love it. When people say to me, "Oh, well, you're just a salesman," I wear being a salesman as a PhD degree doctor. I love it, and I'm really proud to call myself a salesperson. I find the art of sales really majestic and an art, and something that I've perfected over 30 years. Yeah. So I started as a shoe salesman, selling shoes to people, right. Sometimes shoes they didn't want, but I just wanted to see if I could sell it to them. Right. And I thought, I'm really good at this. And that moved into gym equipment, that moved to gym memberships, personal training courses, then digital marketing. Yeah. And I just got better and better and better. And I've learnt the art of sales, and I learnt very quickly that the people in most businesses who make most of the money are the salespeople. Yeah. And commission is something that I love. I love targets, and it played to my personality. So, I love it. I really love it.
And it's funny because a lot of people in the UK struggle with it. Because you can have people that are technically, so in my area of technology, there are people that are gifted in writing code or managing people, but actually get them in front of a client and talk to the client. So my part of sales is a more consultative sales. Yeah. So it's more building relationships, long-term relationships. So you can, in due course, cross-sell against other things. So I work hard on building relationships. And that's my style and the sort of the needs that the company that I work for. Let's go back a little bit earlier to your experiences in Armidale in Australia. Yeah,
very good pronunciation.
Oh, right, good.
Very good. So I'm from Australia, as you can tell from my accent, in a small town called Armidale. It's a pretty weird place because it's in the regional New South Wales. Okay. Very, very small. My dad's a mechanic near 5 hours from Sydney. Right, okay. But it's our closest capital city. Yeah. My dad's a mechanic in the town. We own a local garage, and my mum's a hairdresser. So I had small business running through my veins. So they're
both entrepreneurial, aren't they?
Both entrepreneurial. My mum and dad, both of them. My dad's more of a businessman. My mum's probably more of an entrepreneur. I separate the two. Yeah. My mum's the type of lady that she will negotiate at the local coffee shop over the coffee. Yeah. And she's very good at it. And I picked all of those skill sets up as a kid, because you're watching your mum and dad, that's all you've got. And we never talked about university or degrees. Okay. We always talked about rent on shops. We talked about if that staff member was going to turn up tomorrow, how much we should pay staff. Could we open another branch? And when you're around the dinner table as a child and hearing those conversations, it was pretty infectious. Yeah. So I remember turning 11 or 12 and asking my parents, I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to come and work in the businesses with you. You need to do a couple more years. Right. But let me tell you, as soon as I could get out of school, which I hated, by the way.
I was going to say, were you successful? Or
terrible.
Didn't like it?
No, and I'm not that terrible. You hear the old, I was terrible at school, whatever. There was something about the environment of school, being told what to do doesn't resonate well with me. Right. I'm dyslexic. I can't read and write very well. That wasn't picked up until much later on in my schooling. Right. And I just think that my brain has always been a very, what's the word? I like things that I understand. If you teach me something, my first question is, how can I use this in the real world? Right. I was sitting through Pythagoras theorem, algebra, science with this water and shit going everywhere, and I'm thinking, how can I use this how can I do this in the real world? I've never seen this in real life. Now, if I went on to be a structural engineer, maybe, but the skill sets we're teaching in schools and learning in schools, I don't think are giving us. I never learned how to open a bank account.
Yeah.
I didn't leave knowing what the taxes were on specific things. I didn't leave knowing I didn't know what the HMRC was or whatever, the equivalent in Australia. I think we could be doing a much better job teaching people how to go on and be more successful in business.
So I was in the school in my school in the 90s, and they put aside a sort of business or management sort of course, which was, you didn't have to do it. You just had the option if you wanted to do it extra hours out. I was okay at school, so I did the extra, and that gave me a bit of background. But it was all, our schooling in the UK is all about building up knowledge to be able to do A-levels, GCSEs, and a degree, etc., or masters after that. I totally agree. It's funny. So me, 20 years ago, when I was sort of in that sort of education piece, I actually really loved learning, and that's what I found. And what I talk on my podcast a lot about is my want to learn and the idea of I want to read books, listen to books. I'm starting maybe doing some personal courses as well to bring my knowledge up. But the thing is, you've got everything now on podcasts, audiobooks. It's all there available. So there is. So my point was, I think there's lots of. See, you sound like a typical entrepreneur from this. That you're dyslexic. The whole thing. Richard Branson was dyslexic, and you approach things differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of people who associate with entrepreneurs is that you approach something. A situation or a learning situation completely differently to how I would when I was like, well, I just want to suck up the information. Yeah. So you always thought when you were in school, so does this work in my dad's shop, or does this work?
This is my thinking. Whether I was approaching it too basic, but this is how I approach business studies. They put a course out at school called Business Studies. I thought, you beauty, let's have a go at this. Yeah. I enroll in Business Studies. My first question to the teacher is, how many businesses have you owned? 0. I'm a teacher about business. I said, well, in all due respect, I need to be learning from someone who's run a business. Anyone can read anything in a book, and this is why I'm sure we'll touch on it later. I believe mentoring is essential in business because anyone can read a book and become a coach or a teacher or whatever. Yeah. But practical experience, when the chips are down and you've been there, done that, that is the best teacher. Yeah. And it would be great to see more business people go and speak and teach in schools and universities, which I make sure I do on a yearly basis because I believe that the kids are getting wrong information. And so do you go to business schools or do you... normal universities, business colleges and schools, and speak to the business classes. And interestingly, I was doing one recently in Nottingham and I was speaking at their top business school. And the lecturer was taking notes in my talk, which is amazing. Attribute to me, but a bit worrying. I thought, why is he taking? If I'm telling you something you don't know and you've not told these kids, we're in trouble. But we kind of digress. But I just think we could be doing a lot more to make sure that we're producing future business stars and entrepreneurs that can really achieve in the future. Because I'd love to see British companies come up from the framework that we produce at schools that can compete with Google, Microsoft, Uber. All of the big companies we always talk about are American companies. When are we going to start seeing these household names come from the UK? Yeah, and entrepreneurship in the UK is gaining traction, but I still think a lot of companies are that are more successful are companies that have existed longer term, where a lot of these Facebook didn't exist, 15 years ago, something like that. It's just bizarre now when you think everyone's obsessed with being on Facebook. But just going back, so you said you loved sports when you were a kid, and so you were a trainer of personal trainers. Yes. What did you learn from actually training people in your area? I learned one thing and to relate this to business, which I do about everything, and I'm sorry about that. It's a habit. But the most successful people I've ever met through my career as a trainer, personal trainer, business owner, entrepreneur, most successful people I have met have had a background at sport or in the military. And I investigated this and I looked into why that was, and it comes back to one word, which is discipline. elite athletes and military personnel, when they leave being an elite athlete or the military, retain one skill set, which is discipline. They're able to do the hard things consistently, and they apply that to a business or a product or whatever they're doing, and it becomes successful. And where normal people, I could describe us as normal people, when you're not raised through the military or elite athletes, you go, oh, it's hard today, or it's cold today, or I'm feeling not well today. Where in the military, I don't feel well, you go and do the job that's got to go. And I kind of learned that there's one attribute that runs through really successul people, and it's the ability to do things when they don't want to do it, when that needs to be done. And I found that whenever I was training people physically, I could determine how successful that person was in other areas of their life, about how they would push themselves in a session. And that was really cool. But I learned very quickly as a personal trainer and a trainer of trainers, I was never going to be successful. Whenever you trade your money for time, you're never going to be wealthy, because there's only, I could charge you for this podcast right now £75, like a personal training session. I can't do enough of those to be wealthy, because I only have 24 hours like you do. I need 20 of me doing that at the same time, 24 hours to be successful. And that's why investing and creating passive income is essential to being wealthy.
Right. Interesting. So what about your digital marketing experience that you had before The Apprentice? So I read that you had a successful marketing career.
Yes.
Got to a manager.
So
what did you learn about digital marketing?
I came into digital marketing. By the way, your research is amazing.
Good.
You've asked some really good questions. I learned very early on, as digital marketing started, that it was going to change business. I was working for a company as an employee who didn't have a website and weren't on Google. Their sales were terrible.
When was this?
2010.
So Google
AdWords had just started and it was just becoming a massive thing.
Google,
in 2000, the Yellow Pages came out and said that businesses will never be searched for online. Yellow Pages don't exist anymore,
exactly.
Right? In 2009-10, when I started at this college, they didn't have a website and they weren't on Google. The sales were $2,000 a month. Just $2,000 for the whole company.
Wow.
We're going bankrupt. And I said to the owner, you need to get onto Google. He said, I don't know anything about that. I taught myself how to make a website, and I got it ranking #1 for the keyword personal training course.
And was this pre sort of GoDaddy and sort of so you had to learn how to build.
Had to learn how to do it old school.
Right.
So I do it. In 3 months, from get to #1 on Google for the word personal training course. It was a very average website, but we got there to #1. We went from $2,000 a month to $240,000 a month.
Wow. In how long?
3 months.
3 months. Wow.
And I went, this is going to be big. This Google website, social media era. Facebook was becoming. Facebook was still a huge thing personally. It wasn't a thing really for business yet. And I was like, I'm going to move all my chips into this game because anything that can take a business overnight from nothing to something, and I've seen it do the opposite. I've seen it take multi-billion-pound businesses and cripple them overnight by losing rankings.
Oh, really? Okay.
Any sector that can control success like that, I want to be a part of.
Right.
So I quickly moved into this sector, full steam ahead before it was too early. I remember telling my mum and dad, I'm moving into SEO and PPC, and they looked at me like, what did you just say? I was like, getting websites on Google, they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Did your parents have a website at that stage?
They had a website, but it wasn't, there was just more, having a website in 2000 was like having a business card. It was just kind of, you needed one, but you're not sure why.
You're not sure what it was doing.
Now, people talk to me about SEO like it's the most important
it's a common
thing.
Language now, isn't it?
My dad, the other day, my dad, he is very old-fashioned.
Okay.
He was talking to me about the importance of landing pages. And I said, Dad, you do know this is what I've done for the last 10 years. Landing pages, SEO. And he's like, it's really important, split testing the landing pages. I was like, I know.
You're just like, I was trying to tell you
I
this.
was trying, 10 years ago when I came to you and told you this, you said it was stupid, it wasn't a job, go and be a plumber. Now you're telling me that split testing landing pages is essential, and I think it's great. Now everyone's come on board with things like ClickFunnels and all of this stuff. It's made digital marketing friendly for everyone.
So what's the next trend in digital marketing?
Well, the next trend in digital marketing is video. Okay. For us, all we're talking about is content. We've been talking about content a long time, but it was written content. It was things like also quizzes, games, infographics. Now it's moving very hard to content. Long form, like we're creating now, and short form. Short form for social media, long form for YouTube and your website. And I believe that video content will be the dominant player for the next few years.
So I don't know if you have any expertise on YouTube. I'm sure you have a view on it. But so I read somewhere, and I post this on YouTube in full length version. But I read somewhere that YouTube should be targeted between 10 and 20 minutes.
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. I've read that as well. I've heard that opinion as well. But all of the most successful YouTube channels have the longer content.
We were talking about Joe Rogan beforehand, and that's a prime example. Like, and the interesting thing about Joe Rogan, and I have a particularly strong opinion about Joe Rogan, is I'm really interested in these guests. I think they're great guests, but I don't want a podcast for 3 hours.
No. I agree.
And that's my only problem with it. This is why my podcasts are generally about an hour. If they're my solo stuff, not an interview, it'll be 20, 30 minutes, depending on that. So I've got a particular view that I think there's an overkill stage on certain YouTubers.
His are way too long.
Yeah.
I think that London Reels are perfect amount of time. If you ask me what's the perfect amount of time for YouTube, I would say 1 hour to 1 hour 30.
Yeah.
3 hours is ridiculous. 20 minminutes is too short. 20 minutes is I would call short form content.
But does it work on YouTube? Interestingly, do you think that because in business, I think people are more interested to go long format, hour and a half, maybe 3 hours. But an average YouTuber that's not a business person that is just looking for an interest, a subject. Like, let's just find out about business.
5 minutes.
This is the thing, isn't it? It's the majority of the YouTube audience actually do want 10 minutes.
100%. But then I would go to 5 to 10 minute content. Right. I think 20 minutes to half an hour, and I've read this is a very similar study to you. I think you fall in an abyss of nothingness, because serious entrepreneurs and business owners want long form, which is 1 hour, and they will watch every minute of that 1 hour. And people dipping their toe in want 5 minutes.
I agree.
And what I've seen on the campaigns I work on is the longer form the content, the better rankings it gets within. The longer, the higher the rankings. Okay. And if you look at Joe Rogan stuff, it is painfully 3 hours, and I've never made it all the way through all of one. However, his rankings for all of those videos under the guest name are top.
It's interesting because so I've been looking at the YouTube sort of audiences and it's not views, is it? It's actually how long people are actually on there. So Correct. It's an interesting dynamic. Like, everyone thinks they go to YouTube, I'll just put something on and I'll get 100,000 views. Well, actually, that's almost sometimes 2 minutes or less than. I think you're absolutely right. I think YouTube is still evolving. Yeah. I don't think it's a finished.
It's a long way. And what Google will do, who own YouTube, so YouTube's the second largest search engine in the world. Google right now concentrate all their algorithmic updates and time, majority of on the search engine. Yeah. The search engine is going to change a lot and kind of die a bit, the way we look through things. Things like Siri, Cortana, voice search, searching directly is changing the game. Yeah. Kids now just search on YouTube. Yeah. They search through apps, they search on YouTube, they don't use Google. Yeah. You know, watch your young child as they grow, they'll be using things completely different to how you and I do everything. And a lot of it is through video, through YouTube, straight on.
But also voice as well. I'm a big advocate of voice. I think it's going to be a big thing. I don't think there's a killer app yet. No. But there'll be something that will then catapult it, and you'll end up having, every room of your house, I think.
It's still learning. Yeah. And wearables is growing, like the watch, the iWatch is a huge market now. And what's crazy is how much they're picking up what you're saying.
This is the thing. I read an interesting article. We are totally digressing.
Sorry. I love this stuff. I get so
but it's interesting because is Alexa on all the time?
It is. 100%.
It is, isn't it? And in essence, they are collecting data about us. But do they? This is what. So my justification in my head why it's not a massive problem is if I'm sitting there talking to my wife about her day and she's telling me about her therapy, she's a psychotherapist, and this is what I do. Is the data that's being collected there any real value? I suppose there could be advertising for something to do with counselling or something like that. I'm not. So I read something that 70 or 80% of things that collect on Alexa is not really relevant. But the problem at the moment is that there isn't anyone listening, but they are collecting information about it as well. So when that becomes more sophisticated, then
when supercomputers become a thing and can make sense. Right now, I think there's so much data going in that we can't deal with. That's fine.
Well, AI will be the next thing.
AI and supercomputers will be able to figure all that out very quickly. And that becomes scary. Right now, do I care? I work with these companies. I know exactly how powerful the stuff is.
Right.
It's scary, but I don't care because, like you say, they don't care about Mark Wright, what he's saying while he's having his tea. Who cares? But if I was the Prime Minister, I would not be having an Alexa or a Siri or a Cortana anywhere near me, and I'd have that phone off. It depends on your job. It depends on the sensitivity of the stuff that you're doing on a daily basis. But do they care that what you and I are getting up to on the day? Probably not.
So I think Alexa is at the moment business to consumer. We've trialed a little bit in our business to business. It still just isn't quite right at the moment. The only real thing for me from a business point of view is actually if you're driving, if you're a salesman driving around the country, it might be quite useful to get some information through Alexa. But I still don't think there's defined. We're so early on voice. I think.
But by the way, I was a big outspoken person saying, who needs this stuff for their house? I have Alexa, it's unbelievable.
It changes your life, doesn't
Game
it?
changer.
Even for the music sense.
I
So
know.
just listening to music and just being able to say, Alexa, play that.
I didn't want it. I resisted, and I got one. I got the Fire Stick for my TV initially. Game changer. And I was like, I wanted to hate it, and the product is so good.
It's annoying. Jeff Bezos is clever.
Isn't it that? People always come back to, and I hope one day, and I know one day this will be the case, but people come back to Apple and Amazon to make business references. And because we deem them to be so successful and the pinnacle, the gold standard to say, well, with Apple, what they do is, and we use that as a baseline. Isn't that incredible? We're up to question one.
That's what I'm just thinking. Right. So one of the big things I'm interested in is mentors. I have a mentor, and he's been incredibly important on getting promotions and being able to move my career forward. So obviously, quite publicly, you have Lord Sugar as a mentor, but I'm actually interested a little bit more about your other mentors that you have also. So what's the value that you get, and maybe just throw in something that you've learned from one of the other mentors.
It is, what's the value? Millions and millions of pounds. Life-changing. Both mentally, for my mental state, and physically and financially. When I won the Apprentice, if you asked me if I could pick the £250,000 on mentoring, I would have picked the £250,000 because I'd never seen that level of money. Now, £250,000 isn't a lot of money. I would just take the mentoring because a good mentor can train you how to make infinite amounts of money. Because it comes back to what we were speaking about earlier. When you have tough days, when you go through bad periods, you want to pick the phone up or have a meeting with the person. They say, I've been there 10 times and here's what I did. And even just hearing I've been through that relaxes you, helps you. And I have two other mentors on top of Lord Sugar, and they're both very successful. But when I pick a mentor, I pick them for a specific reason. I am very good at analysing my skills and knowing what I need help with and what I've got covered. And at the moment, I need help, very specific mentoring about how to raise debt levels. So I'm looking to raise large amounts of finance.
Right.
So I've sought out a mentor that specifically coaches in building large debt portfolios. So I've now got to the
And are you doing that through funding, or you're not going to do
funding.
it through funding, but you're going to give up a percentage of your business? Or
Yes.
you are going to do that?
Yes. Through board levels of different companies.
Right.
But I had a knowledge gap there. So I went and sought a mentor to help me with my knowledge gap. When I first started in business, my knowledge gap was everything. So I needed a general mentor.
Yeah.
Now I have mentors for it's changed for me.
Yeah.
There's very specific areas. One might be around specific customer targeting. One's about debt. And these are experts in their field. No one person knows everything about everything because they're human beings. Yeah. But some people are experts in specific areas, so you seek out an expert in what you need help with.
And does that mean that you... so my mentor, I've worked long-term with, we're talking probably 5, 6 odd years, 7 years. So are your mentors, as you say, for specific things that you would do, and then you might then take a step back from that mentor? Is that
That's correct.
And that would be so just from a very personal point of view. So would you go with an outline of a conversation with a mentor saying, I want to achieve this, can you do that? They say yes. Yeah. And then you've then got them for 6, 9, 12 months, whatever that period
100%.
is. And that's obviously flexible depending on what you
And I have several types of mentors, ones that I pay, ones that do it for free that are really successful.
Well, the thing that I say to people here, some people might have a finance problem, not being able to pay mentors. Mentors are quite expensive because you're getting a lot of expertise. Podcasts, YouTube are all places where people can get free mentorship, and there are a lot of people out there who are doing that, and they're doing that content for free. Yeah. And I think people should, because everyone loves scrolling through Instagram and seeing a motivational quote, but actually one of my points that I make is, okay, that might be inspiring for 30 seconds, but actually listening to a person inspire you about something to do with business lasts forever.
And by the way, that's why I do my content that I put out on social media is I get hundreds of messages, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds a week, particularly through LinkedIn and DMs on Instagram for people to ask me to mentor people. Now, if I mentored everyone that asked me, I wouldn't be successful myself. So I spoke to my team last year and I said, how can we help all these people? Obviously, the entrepreneurship has become cool. So many people need help. So now I do my content because what I'm saying is I genuinely believe, and I genuinely believe if you listen to it, it will help you. And now I can mentor everyone by proxy through my social media, and it's been hugely successful.
Yeah. And social media is just a catapult for that, isn't it? We talked a bit about it beforehand, but social media. We'll come on to social media. So reportedly, and you can correct me, but reportedly, in the first 2 months, you got Climb Online profitable. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So we made a loss of £3,000 in our first month, and we made a £12,000 profit in our second month.
And was that because you got clients, or brought new people in to do skill sets, or
both?
How many was it when you started?
Me. Just me.
Yeah.
That was it. So for the first month it was me. The second month there was 3 of us.
Wow.
So I brought in skill sets. I brought in a salesman, operations manager, people to do the work. Interestingly, I was doing everything. I was selling the work, processing it, and doing it.
Right.
Very tough. Yeah. Very tough. Now I have, what have we got? 60 employees now. Yeah. So it's just not me now. We've got we've got a lot of employees now. Yeah. It's weird because it just happened so quick. Yeah. And I started in my bedroom I lived in Canada Water at the time, and my bed was there, my desk was here. I literally sat 3 foot from my bed, but I used to get up and make sure I put a shirt on so I felt like I was at work. Yeah. And that's how I started. And I think that was really tough time, but it taught me a lot to get the agency to work.
But this is the thing about business, isn't it? So I'm thinking about automating some of my stuff on podcasts, but I'm glad I've done all this me personally, so I can then tell people what I want, when I want it, how to deliver it, because I understand the processes. It'd be hard for you to be able to tell what your operations person was going to do if you didn't understand it yourself.
I completely agree. And even now today, I'll walk up to one of the campaign managers, say doing PPC, and I'll say, open up AdWords and show me this, this, and this, and they'll be like, wow, I didn't even know you knew that stuff. And I'll be like, that's the point. Yeah, exactly. I've done this. Yeah. I've done your job. And it's very important for a good manager, a good owner to have, I don't have to say you have to be an expert in every field, but it's very important to know someone when you're having a conversation with one of your people, to be able to speak to them on their level. Yeah. And I think that's made us very successful.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good. So what's your thought about work-life balance when it comes to being an entrepreneur?
I've just done an article about this, and my answer is this. To be successful in any area of your life, and this can be any area, family, fitness, health, friends, business, whatever, there needs to be a sacrifice of time. At some point, a large sacrifice of time. Yeah. Any business that's ever been successful ever has had a person or a group of people sacrifice at some point a large chunk of time to make that successful. Yeah. After or before that point, that chunk is, let's call it sacrificed, you can have balance. Okay. At some point, you just need to commit. Yeah. So for me, my work-life balance right now is much better than it was when we started. Right. Okay. When we first started, for the first 2 years, there was no work-life balance. Yeah. It was just work to survive. Yeah. Now I have balance because I have offices, I have employees, I have shared ownership, I have so much more help. Yeah. So I put it out, if we want to go and get the best bodies, be bodybuilders, there needs to be 1 or 2 years of extreme sacrifice. Now, you see the guy, he's training just the same amount of everything else because he's maintaining what he's got. Yeah. Yeah. So Jeff Bezos now says, well, I lay in bed and do thought mornings and have idea clouds and all of this stuff. He wasn't doing that at the start.
1999.
He was not laying in bed till midday having thought bubble clouds. He was in there. He was sleeping on the floor. He was hearing the order bell go off. I know because I've seen him say this. Yeah. Elon Musk, at the start of all of his companies, is sleeping on the couches doing all that stuff. Now, it sounds awful. There is no balance. But when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like what you think it feels like. So I think balance is important, but I also think sacrificing at some point is also necessary. Right. I don't know how that answers your question, but that's my honest answer.
So the sacrifice. So in most cases, when it comes to businesses, that sacrifice is right at the start, isn't it? Right at the start. When you're trying to get everything up and going, you'll spend most of the time. But so let's delve a little bit further into, so you're now successful, you've got a successful business. You said you've got multiple businesses?
Yeah, I've got 5 businesses.
Right, 5 businesses. So you're actually managing 5 different groups of people. Yeah. But you can still, because you have the right people in place to help you. So have you developed into an ideas man, like Jeff Bezos was saying, that he lays in bed and thinks about his thoughts, and people doing, or are you a mixture of still operational as well as...
Well, my role is, we call it content creation, marketing, big ideas, and big decisions. Right. So that's how I define my role. That's the key thing, isn't it? People have the big ideas, but you've got to action it. And so you have to make those calls as well. 100%. The most important thing I do is meet with my managers on a daily basis. Yeah. So I always say you never invest in a business, you invest in a person. Yeah. I've invested in good businesses that have gone bad because there's the wrong people running them. Yeah. And I've invested in bad businesses with great people running them, they become successful. So it's very important to look at the managing director in the businesses you invest in or own. And for me, I've got a group of management which is unbelievable. We're working on them all the time to make them better. But I have people that are very committed to me. They believe in me and what I produce. Yeah. And I could lead them into the fire. And they'll come with me and say, let's rock and roll, let's burn it up. Yeah. Because they believe in my brand that I'm selling. And that's really important.
It's really important because you talk about your Steve Jobs, you talk about your Richard Bransons, who come up with the ideas, and as you say, will walk through fire to get you to that point. And a lot of these guys that get to that sort of level, they are the ideas person, but they've got to have those key people in place. Yeah. And Steve Jobs was great, although known as, well, not known in some cases, but he was not a very nice person. But he had an inspirational quality that there's people that worked at Apple that were determined to get that Apple Mac, whatever it was, on, or the the iPad or the phone, the iPhone, and they will work their guts out to get that delivered. And I think that's what I see in my corporate environment is sometimes that's a little bit missing. I wouldn't say that like people that I work with now are great and people I've worked at previously have been great, but I have spotted that you can be quite senior and not be very inspirational and not bring people along the journey with you. Because a lot of things I've talked about is bringing people along your journey as you're developing. Yeah. And that's incredibly important.
Do you know why one of your senior people haven't got that same motivational quality? Because they've got no skin in the game. Yeah. Skin in the game changes the view of everyone involved. Yeah. And I always say that you should work in a business that has an owner in it somewhere, because the passion and the care for the business and the clients is at a level that you can't describe. Yeah. And I was speaking to one of my top managers the other day, and I said to him, where do you see your career? Just out of interest, how long do you see yourself being here? And I've never posed that question to him. And he said, I'll be with you until I die.
Oh, wow.
He's 24 years old.
Wow.
He's got a long way before he dies. But he wants to, it's amazing. Yeah. That he's been with me 5 years. He started with me when he was, 18, 19 years old. And he's saying, I want to be here until the end of my life. That is, to have that sort of passion from a person is pretty unbelievable.
And you only really get that in startup mentality, isn't it?
He's changed his life, this kid. He came to me, he rang me and said, I'm £19,000 in debt at the time. I'm living in Portsmouth with my mum, and I want to come and work for you. And I said, well, that you haven't sold a very good picture there. And our office is in London, and it's a Friday evening. He said, I'll start on Monday morning. I said, okay, how? He said, don't worry about that, I'll start on Monday morning. He started with me. He's now a multi-millionaire. Right. He's a multi-millionaire, owns his own house. He just bought his own house. He owns a company with me. I own 75%, he owns 15%. And he's a multi-millionaire at 24. Wow. That guy has changed his life in 5 years because he spotted in me a talent or an opportunity. He spotted an opportunity.
And people don't like using that word opportunity, but I think a lot of business is all about taking opportunities when they come. You might be in a recession, but there's opportunities there or whatever it is. So, I think that's great that he saw the opportunity in you and sort of, he did leverage you quite well, didn't he?
He leveraged me. He saw me on The Apprentice. And he said, I want to work for that guy. Okay. He hounded me. I'd say he probably sent me 30 emails, LinkedIn, tweets. Yeah. And it was easier to hire him to make him go away, really. It was just easier just to say, listen, you're so annoying, I need to give you a go. And I remember when I hired him, I said, if you annoy my customers as much as you annoy me, we're going to have a successful business. And he's my top guy because his work ethic is just insane. But what a special person to see that opportunity. If he can spot it in me, he's going to spot it out there in the field, and he's become probably my number two in a lot of senses.
Right, slightly different twist on what we've talked about previously. In 2019, what's more important for small medium business in the UK, social media or a website? Well, even if you'd asked me up to a few months ago this question, I would have said a website. Right. But I believe truly we're on the verge of it swinging for the first time the other way. Right. Social media is really powerful stuff right now. Yep. And a lot of people are using the social media to determine their purchasing decision over the website. Right. With the introduction of things like the marketplace and shops across all platforms, a lot of people aren't even going to the website before making a purchasing decision, which is crazy. But it's happening. I think Facebook now is playing a larger part for all businesses than it has in history. Instagram is just a powerhouse for B2C products and LinkedIn for B2B. It's interesting, on Instagram, people now, I had to buy some flowers, so it doesn't matter why I had to buy some flowers, but they said, go on Instagram. Look at all of my pictures. Give me a date, give me a topic header, and we'll get them for you. And this was unreal for me because I thought you'd have to talk through what you wanted or go onto a website. They went, no, just Instagram. This is our area, and that we've got. I don't know. I scrolled through probably 50. Now I'm not really a flowers man myself, so I really didn't know what I really wanted. But you start going through, and you're thinking about from 50th, 60th. Picture, you're suddenly getting an opinion. I think that's phenomenal. Unbelievable. I just booked an osteopath. I've never been to an osteopath,
but I saw these videos of this guy doing a treatment on another guy, and it looked amazing. And it was a video. It was a compilation of all him doing all the treatments. I went, wow. Yeah. And I booked it on Instagram. I don't even know. I was just thinking as you were speaking, does that guy even have a website? I don't know. I booked it on Instagram. No, he's ages away. And this just comes back to, I don't know, I didn't care where he was. I don't know how much he charges. I just know that looked amazing. And I want to have that treatment done. And it's amazing. So, I think for the first time ever, social media is playing a bigger part than a website.
That's really interesting, because I've over these last probably 3 or 4 months I've started, because I probably about 2 years ago set up so I did Facebook, I did Instagram, I did LinkedIn. I've got them all set up with this purpose, with the podcast, that I would trial them out and see which one is the biggest leverage. And I've actually moved from majority on Twitter. I've moved onto Instagram, and actually, we were talking about Instagram before. For me, it's a little bit, it's sort of 15 to 25-year-olds where I was getting traction. But I think people, when I speak to friends, family members, sort of people that is interested in podcasts, the actual trigger point for podcasters is probably 25 to 40.
Yeah.
Because people are either, and you were saying about your Instagram profile, those men that are looking for something to do with their lives or catapult their lives forward in that sort of 30s.
Yeah.
I think it's massive for...
You know what I find interesting? And by the way, I totally agree with you. And I have my biggest following on Twitter, which is now completely useless. I've just seen Twitter die a pretty quick death.
Yeah.
But it's dead now, to my mind. Unless you're Donald Trump. So I've moved as much as my audience across to the other channels as I can, but it's really interesting. I do tests where I do the same post across all channels just to see.
Yeah.
I'll get nothing but positive rays of sunshine, amazing comments on Instagram. On Twitter, I just get trolled hate.
But it's interesting.
Media
still love
Twitter. It's instant access to news, written news.
Yeah.
And I go to Twitter if I want fast news.
Yeah.
I used to go to Twitter for social media, to tweet my mind, to read other people's. Now I look at things like celebrities, movies, videos, all on Instagram and Facebook, and I just go to there I see what Donald Trump is doing, and I read the news if I want to see breaking news quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it will survive on that premise. Yeah. I don't think we'll see the types of engagement that we've historically seen for businesses and for normal civilian individuals. It's now more just for politicians and news.
Because Facebook for me wasn't irrelevant, but I've found in the last 6 months that the Facebook groups has just catapulted the business.
Groups are amazing.
Yeah.
If you've got a good product or you have a specific service that you can launch into a group, unbelievable. Their ad platform is incredible. Their targeting is unbelievable, particularly around specific demographics. Yeah. And that's where it's changed businesses. Unfortunately, Twitter missed the boat. Their advertising platform sucks.
Yeah.
And they just, I don't think you could do as much with the words. They were laden with videos. Yeah. They kind of missed the boat because they were so successful. Yeah. Facebook kind of killed their algorithm and getting organic stuff, but it's surviving through its ad platform. They made some really intelligent buying decisions. They bought WhatsApp and Instagram. What two purchases they were. If you look at anyone's phone, they have Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
So Gary Vee, I've seen him say about Instagram was bought for $1 billion, and everyone thought, oh my God, he's overspent.
That is, imagine what it's worth now. It must be 60 billion.
Exactly.
50, 60 billion.
And so slightly differently, but you were saying about WhatsApp. I think that's an interesting platform. What's going to happen to that? Are we going to get advertising? How's that going to organically grow?
I think they're so scared of touching it because WhatsApp now is the biggest communication app in the world.
Yeah.
I don't use the text thing. If someone texts me on my phone, like normal text, before it was WhatsApp, and now if I go, geez, that's weird, and I WhatsApp them back, I just use WhatsApp. The end-to-end encryption is cool. Not that I'm doing anything naughty, I just like that level of security. And I just find the usability, the speed, the ticks, all of that stuff, something about it that gets my brain really going. The text just doesn't work.
See, I've still got relatives that send text to me, and it takes me like a day to come back to them because it's like I'll just go straight in. Because the text, you don't always get them flashed up on your front screen unless you've got the notifications.
And it feels weird using it, doesn't it? And I think a study recently I was reading, people have on average 4 to 4.5 apps on their phone. Only 4.
What?
Right?
That they functionally use
every day. Right? 3 of them are owned by Facebook.
So Facebook,
Instagram, and WhatsApp, and then one's normally a banking app.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating. That's some pretty clever purchasing decisions. If you had Facebook, most people would have sat back and thought, we've had a pretty successful company here. They went out and made £1 billion purchases. Yeah. And as you say, people were going, 900 million, $1 billion, that's crazy. Now they're worth 40 billion, 50
See, it's
billion.
interesting because I see Facebook as an interesting sort of model because they've not grown in the same way Amazon has grown, and they've not had the success that Apple have had long term. But you're finding that a lot of things that Amazon are going into AWS and their support system. This is Facebook's area that they're sort of infringing on. Apple, and now they've got a saturation point on their hardware, so they're now looking software and televisions and things like that. All these companies are having to pivot to match sort of where Facebook is going. Like Facebook is still not as big as those other two, but the sort of trajectory, the potential for trajectory, as long as they can sort out that. I still think there's a problem with Facebook, this whole, is it an open stream or is it a privacy? Or I think Mark Zuckerberg said an open privacy is what they're looking at.
I don't think they know.
What does that mean?
Yeah, when you're going into uncharted territory like we are with tech, the people who make it kind of make the rules up, and we've seen that recently. And we talk about with Brexit and the elections and all of this stuff. Definitely, because no one knows how this stuff works other than the people steering it. Yeah. We're in uncharted stuff that there's not laws for, and it's a scary time. You've got to be careful what you're putting out there. Yeah. But Amazon, I think, are the ones to watch. Right. They've got the money, they've got the facilities, they've got the people to be able to. They're going to come in and dominate TV like you've never seen.
Well, this is the interesting thing about Netflix versus Amazon Prime, and it is splitting people. Yeah. And at the moment, we've still got a Netflix domination, especially in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. But I've heard.
Do you see content
along the grapevine that that the money that is being invested in movies and TV by Amazon is something like double to triple what Netflix are doing, and I think. It's a bit of a lag. They invest now. The movie might come out in a year's time. Yeah. But I think the investment is just significant. From December this year, you'll be able to watch Premier League games on Amazon Prime as part of your membership. Yeah. Premier League. Yeah. So what's going to happen to things like Sky, BT Sport? Yeah. I think we're going to be talking about Sky and BT Sport legacy. They're going to be dying out because if you can go and watch all your movies, you can go and watch all your sport on your Amazon.
But it's funny, a lot of people that I know are buying Amazon and buying Amazon Prime and not having Freeview but never really watching it. Like Sky and BT Sport have to be really careful. The only thing they've got is the sport, which is dominating their business. These friends of mine that just have Amazon Prime and Netflix.
I only have Amazon Prime and Netflix. I don't have Sky. Okay. I couldn't tell you the last time I went on normal TV. I haven't got an antenna, so if I want to watch isn't that crazy? I was just thinking, when would I? And then I was like, I don't even have an antenna. If I want to, so I love Louis Theroux, and if he does a documentary, I'll go on iPlayer and I'll just watch it on iPlayer or through Alexa. I'm using Amazon to go and watch normal TV. So I'm kind of the new standard, I think, in terms of my habits. Yeah. It's crazy what you can do. You can do your shopping on your TV. You can speak to it. And the playback stuff is just insane. As soon as the sport is on there, I think Sky's dead. Yeah, I do. I think they've had a great run, but I think Netflix and Amazon are a whole new standard of TV. But I've heard that Disney's going to make an incredible bid to come into the space.
Well, the Disney is really interesting because Disney cover everything from The Lion King now to Star Wars, some of the Marvel stuff they've got as well, and the sort of offshoots that they could have just on their Disney Plus channel is going to be like it's going to be like Sky. Sorry, bye bye.
I think if I was Sky, I would be making pretty serious. I wouldn't try and compete. To be completely
what they've
honest.
done is with Netflix recently. So I actually still have a Sky subscription. Sport is mainly for me is the reason why, but you can now have Netflix on Sky.
There you go.
So they are even understanding. See, Rupert Murdoch isn't stupid, and he's seen that there's still a growing market with Netflix, which they can't breach at the moment. So,
and I think for Rupert, the decision would be: do I go into a spending war against Amazon and Netflix? Which I don't think anyone wins that war. I think Amazon wins it. He's probably gone, let's go in, we've made an incredible run, let's go and try and partner and see where we are. Because they have the rights.
So we've talked about your career, about some of the things earlier on, but one of the things you've talked about is how important goals are.
Yes.
I'm big on goals. I set them every 6 months.
Yep.
I have long-term goals, which are sort of 10-year goals that I have as well. So what's your sort of structure to your goal setting?
I thought it was bollocks before I started. I thought it was mumbo jumbo that just people said to motivate people. Every year since I started writing goals down, I remember my manager challenging me to do it just as a joke. He said, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? Just see what happens.
Yeah.
Every year that I've done it, I've tripled my income every year. Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I truly believe that people that are unhappy in their life or unhappy in their job just don't have goals. Right. They're just floating around life, really not sure what's happening. Yeah. As soon as you start writing down goals and having objectives, you feel an uprightness to your carriage almost. You kind of feel like you now know the purpose of why you're here. Yeah. And I think that when you have bad days, you have stressful days, you have days somewhere in between, you look at your goals and it reminds you what you're doing it for. For you, it might be your child or the house you want to buy or whatever it might be. But having it brings you out of that, makes you feel better. I found that having goals has brought my motivation up. Yeah. It's made me go through bad times a lot easier, but also I've achieved them. Yeah. And that's a pretty awesome feeling. Yeah. I set them once a year. Right. I review them every Sunday. Right. And I have them on me all the time. Okay. So that's interesting. So for goal setting, they're kind of split into three, the structures that I've heard of. There's one that you sort of review every day, or it could be a mantra that you look at every day. Affirmation type.
Yeah, affirmation. You then have sort of medium-term goals, which is your yearly or 6 monthly, and then you sort of have your 10 years, whatever. I think the biggest thing about it is accountability.
I agree.
It gives you that sort of like, it's on that paper or it's on your phone. You can't get away from it, and I think that's what it forces me to, when I'm reviewing it or just checking it, I think, oh gosh, of those 10 things, those 2 things I haven't really worked hard on, your 6 months through the year, well actually I'll refocus on those other 2. So could you share one of your goals?
I'll share with you the strategy I had for this year. Best thing I ever did. I just wanted, so they say if you aim for Mars, you might hit the moon. Yeah. And that's like goals, right? If you aim up here and you hit here, well, if you were down here anyway, it's still pretty successful. Yeah. So I thought, what if I'm doing for the first 6 months of this year, I write down to achieve more than I've ever done in my life, goals-wise. Yeah. So I wrote down, I've never run a marathon. Right. I've never done a webinar, do a webinar. Yeah. Host an event, create your own event and host it. Yeah. All in 6 months, by the way. Right? Excellent. And this is in January. I've not done any at this point. And multiple other things. Well, we're now 8 months into the year. I've run a marathon. By the way, it was really tough. Yeah, it was really hard. It started my own event called ClimbCon, which sold out, did it to over 500 people. I did a webinar called a digital marketing webinar, and I did a meetup. I did all the things within 6 months, almost one a month, and these are really serious things. The marathon was no joke. But because I wrote it down and I held myself to it and I told others about it.
That's also a good way of doing it.
I just did it. Yeah. And I've done now more in the first 6 months of this year. I've never done any of those things in 30 years. I've done all of them in the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And what goals make you do is actually realize how much you can do, and how quickly you can do things when you set your mind to it.
See, that's one of the things that I would say that corporate businesses are better at, in the sense that there is always a yearly, well, not always, but often a yearly cycle. And the problem that I've found is that I kind of have to write two sets of goals. So I have to write something for work that's very corporate driven and very suited to that environment. But equally, I do my own objectives, which have a mixture between the corporate stuff and the podcast stuff.
That's very good.
And so it is a bit of a pain having to do it twice, but essentially there's trigger points or milestones in a corporate career when you need to look at your objectives. So that's already, as long as you're diligent, you get those checkpoints whenever, like twice, 3 times in a year.
I think that's sensible.
But the stuff that I do personally, which transcends both areas, has a lot more value, because that I'm truly honest with myself and what I want to achieve and how I want to achieve it. And I think goals are so important. I've talked about this 2 or 3 times on my podcast, and I just think that it's accountability, it's about drive. And that's what I think, what my point was, that I think more startup areas don't have that structure.
Yeah.
That it's a little bit difficult to try and implement structure, because how often do your guys in your business get promoted as such, or do they just get pay rises?
We have annual reviews now, which is a new thing. We've never had reviews at all.
Yeah.
Now we have annual reviews.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they get promoted. We set 3 monthly objectives, what we call objectives. Everyone's measured over 3 months, 4 times a year. And if you hit your objectives over 12 months, you're considered for a review both in salary and title.
Okay. Right.
Now, that doesn't mean you'll get it. You have to hit a pretty serious list of objectives. But my mantra, and if you ask any of my managers what my mantra is, it's what gets measured gets achieved.
Right.
We're all about measurement,
Yeah.
goal setting at every level and measuring.
Yeah.
Because I believe that's really important. And if you look at a bad business, it's generally that people are floating around not really sure what their objective is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone asked me this morning in an interview if I could just give one piece of advice about business, what would I say? And I said, if I could only tell you one thing, and it was the only thing that I was allowed to tell you, it would be to set goals.
Right.
Because I believe above all else that I've ever been taught or learned from millionaires, billionaires, successful people, goals will make the biggest difference more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so it's really funny you touch on it, because I truly believe that it changed my life.
Yeah.
And I go and do these podcasts all the time and interviews, and I would have spoken to hundreds of thousands of people and told them that, and the amount of people who hear it and don't go and do it is crazy. Imagine hearing that the key to success is goals, and then you don't go down and write goals down. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And then this is one of the reasons why I talk about it, because my mentor is big on trying to set goals for yourself and how to make it. But actually, it started from listening to a podcast. I think it was Tim Ferriss that talked about making himself accountable by writing a journal. Now, it's not something that every day about what he's achieved and what he wants to achieve the next day. That's not for me. I don't have the time to spend an hour or whatever to do that. But it was him who said that you need to be able to make yourself accountable, and to be driven, you need something to achieve. And the only way you can do that is by having goals and having objectives. So
I think every successful person I've met has told this to me.
Yeah.
So isn't that it'd be crazy not to listen. I guess when you work 4 hours a week like Tim does, you can write a journal. But the rest of us working normal hour weeks, Tim, have to do it a bit more effectively.
Yeah. So leading on from that, because I like Tim Ferriss, so I've read a couple of these books. What book that you've read has had the biggest impact on your business or career?
The book that's had the most impact on me as a person and my career is The Alchemist.
Oh, yeah.
By Pablo Coelho.
I haven't read it, but
it's on my life.
It's on my wish list.
The audio book narrated by Jeremy Irons.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Changed my life.
Okay.
And I've listened to it maybe 40 times.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is.
So just a little bit of background. So it's actually a fictional story, isn't it?
It's a fictional story, and it is a God, the name escapes me, but it's basically like it's a story about life. It's about a shepherd who takes his sheep. It's a fable.
Right.
Takes his sheep through Spain and through Africa, and all these things crop up, which are metaphors about life.
Yeah.
And the way he deals with them, game changing.
Okay.
It is honestly just tremendous stuff, and it would probably be my number one book. That's helped me in my business. Then Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill,
Yeah, brilliant.
Which is a fantastic book. It's written so old-fashioned, kind of sexist in a way, but it was a sign of the times. It was like written in the early 1900s. Because my business hero is Andrew Carnegie, who mentored Napoleon Hill.
Oh, I didn't realise there was a link there, because it's how to influence people.
No, that's Dale Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie started a steel company called Carnegie Steel, which is now the American Steel Corporation. And he was at the same time as John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and my favourite documentary of all time that I've ever seen is called The Men Who Built America.
Okay.
About those guys, who's Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie. Unbelievable. But he mentored Napoleon Hill, and he told Napoleon Hill he needed to go and interview all these people and write a book, which is Think and Grow Rich, which is my second favourite book, and 10X by Grant Cardone, amazing book. So I think they're probably the three. And this one, I throw this in there, which gets an odd reaction from people, but I loved it. The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's book.
Oh, right.
Unbelievable book.
Just for his dealership, just how he approaches.
Just you can understand now, like or hate or think whatever you want about the Donald. His approach to thinking big is really a success key. Right. He thinks on a level that is just ridiculous. I mean, the guy sleeps in the White House now. But when he approaches deals, the way he's thinking is how I've seen Alan Sugar, mentors I have, how they approach deals. And the reason I like it is there's a lot of patterns in there that if people could understand, they could make much bigger deals and set much bigger goals. And I really liked it for that perspective.
Okay. I must admit, like, obviously everyone's tainted by Donald Trump at this very moment in time. And I think probably his legacy won't just be the White House. I think people will appreciate his business career at some stage in the future. Yeah. I think it really depends on whether he wins the next
what sort of political career he had. But I as you know, and we're talking about, I do a lot of reading. I think that, if you want to earn more, you've got to learn more, you've got to continually be reading. And I try to read on average one book a week. I don't always hit it, but it's always my intention. I'm dyslexic, can't read and write, so I listen on Audible. Yeah, me too. And I download a book on a Sunday. I try and, whenever I'm on the tube or in the car, I have it on. Yeah. Which is really hard on the tube because it's so noisy and I can't hear sometimes. But that's just a bugbear. But game changer. Yeah. I really...
So learning is just...
Learning's so important. And sometimes I get so, like, this morning I listened to a podcast. And it's really important. I have my own podcast. I come on other people's podcasts like yourself. But you should never think that I have a podcast so I don't listen to anyone else's. It's really important. You can always be learning. Yeah. And I listened to this podcast this morning and it was just unbelievable. And I literally, for half an hour this morning, I was literally like, it took my breath away. It was just such a good...
So I break my trends for my journeys in the morning podcast, in the afternoon Audible.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
And that's how I sort of have to approach it. Because, as you said, as I release podcasts every week, I've got to hear what other people are doing and sort of see what they're testing the market with. This whole thing with Tim Ferriss recently, where he put on a subscription instead of advertising. It lasted 2 months, and he went, it just doesn't work for my people. I'm going to go back to advertising.
I don't think it works for anyone.
There's a guy in the UK called Rob Moore.
Yeah.
And he's quite an outspoken sort of character, but... he will not have advertising on his podcast at all, but he has recently put on a subscribers on Facebook, where he's got a group on Facebook where you pay, I think it's $3.49 a month.
£300?
No, £3. £3.
Okay.
And the idea is that he gives unique or personal content to that group. Now, I think he's been able to leverage that because he's talked for years about, I will not advertise on my podcast.
Yeah. And Rob Moore's rich and successful in other areas, so he probably doesn't need the revenue as much. Exactly. So, I would take that advice,
it's a pinch of salt. Yeah, absolutely. And this is, but it's interesting hearing these guys what their challenges are, what they're facing. There's a guy in the US called James Altucher, and he's a completely unique guy in the fact that he's had 4 failed businesses and made millions 4 times and lost it 3 times.
Wow!
And he's now on the 4th time, and he's learnt his mistake. And it's great. Just his podcasts are really fascinating. He's written a couple of short books, they're about 3-hour books. But really, really interesting character. Sort of Gerald Ratner of the US.
Fantastic.
So
what a guy.
Yeah, to hear the sort of determination to be able to, because it's all learned habits. And he's like, I learned how to make money fine. It was keeping it, which I had the problem with. So it's interesting. Like even someone that's been hugely successful, lost you. You can go through phases of your career, can't you? And then the struggle of getting to whatever X amount
fair play
is.
To it.
But actually keeping it and investing it in the right things.
If you look at Premier League football players, you look at people who win the lottery, and what happens to them after they win the lottery, when they retire, they go broke.
Yeah.
And that's because it's not making money, it's learning the process of money that is the most important thing. Making money is actually easier than most people think. Keeping money is really hard. And that's why these people go bankrupt just as quickly as they get it. And the reason why you could take all my money in my businesses now, I would be back here within a year to 2 years because I've learned the process.
Exactly.
And it's the knowledge, and we keep coming back to the same thing, but that's why mentoring is so essential because it's learning. Yeah,
and my mentor says everything is the same.
Yeah,
doesn't matter how far you go up or whatever level you're at. Everything is exactly the same.
And that's why people always say, "Oh, well, you only know about digital marketing or property or PR to me or whatever." And I say, "Business is business." Exactly. Take your product out of it. Yeah. There's fundamental structures in a business, which is finance, operations, and people.
Yeah.
And once you understand how to find and retain good people and train good people, once you have good processes within your business, and once you have good financial structuring.
So you could go back and work on your mum's business and get a hairdresser's.
I'd have the most profitable hairdresser. But one thing my mum always taught me, the first business I tried to buy was a restaurant. And my mum said, in any business, remember this. She said, if the head chef turns up, you've got to be able to cook the meal, and you can't cook. What great advice that was. If the barber or hairdresser didn't turn up, I can't cut hair. Yeah. If one of my PPC staff doesn't turn up tomorrow, I can do PPC. Yeah. And that's important in your first business. Right now I have businesses trading where I can't do what they do, but I'm now an investor. Yeah. So the game has changed. In your first business that you work in, you'd want to have some of the skill set.
Yeah. So you've now got 5 businesses.
Yeah.
Or that you're involved in. Do you have an ambition to have an overseas office or maybe an Australian office?
We are talking about taking Climb Online to New York and Sydney.
Okay.
We tried an experiment of regional offices in the UK, which doesn't work.
Okay.
What we established is there is no appetite to work locally anymore. As sad as that sounds, and it is, but in the day and age of Zoom, Zoom and Skype calls, Facebook groups, people don't really care where you're located. Yeah. Yes, they might care that you're in London, that's a cool thing, but they don't care that your Bristol business doesn't want to work with a Bristol company. Yeah. Despite what people might tell you, people just want the best service, the best quality product. People don't care that Apple's made in California. They care that
it's an intellectual property thing, because if you're a hairdresser, it probably is important that you're in that local location, but your sort of industry, which is based on intellectual property, about services, you don't care where the microphone is made. You just care that it's the best microphone and whatever. The days of that sort of stuff is a bit gone. We did trial it, and the numbers don't lie. But what people do want to work with is a British company wants to work with a company in Britain, right? Yeah. Because if you start to think of things like outsourcing and all of this stuff, people then worry about the quality. So what we have found is when we're in the UK, Australian businesses are saying, well, the time difference, this, that, and the other. Yeah. So, and the same with America. So we're looking at moving an agency to New York and then one to Sydney. And I think that would give us a pretty good global footprint, and we could achieve it. So that's on the road, but I would love to do that. All my businesses I own are in England,
And I'm Australian. I'd love to do one in my home country just for the experience of doing one in my own country.
But do you think it would be drastically different from the UK?
Oh, it'd be very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Is that because of a cultural thing, or is that because business is business wherever you are?
No, I think Australia particularly based a lot of its laws and a lot of its structures off the English system.
Yeah.
In America, both England and Australia take a lot of our products and services from America anyway.
Yeah.
But the only things you need to learn when you go to new countries is tax regulations, banking regulations, and you're pretty sweet.
Right.
The thing with Australia and America is they have, so in England, UK, let's say, it's the same throughout the whole country. When you go out to America and Australia, we have states, they have states, and things can vary based on the state, which is a whole other game. They're like little countries within themselves. So we've looked into all that. We're really excited about that. But I think, at the moment, Climb Online is trading just under £10 million. We want to take it to 100 million. And then we either want to IPO, take it public, or keep expanding. But we're probably right now one of the largest privately owned digital marketing agencies.
Okay.
When I say that, because a lot of the big, or my competitors, are all owned by big chains, Omnicom, Mediacom. They're all owned by conglomerates. I'm still I sit in this weird space. You have all the one-man bands and little agencies. You have the big agencies, and I sit in here, which is a crazy space. Because
you can pivot in any direction.
And this is the best thing. So I'm so agile in the space. But we have the problem of we can't charge the low retainers that the one-man bands do, but we provide a much better quality of service because we have a team of people.
So it's scaling, isn't it?
It's scaling.
Scaling, which is your next.
So I imagine, and we're starting to get knocked on the door all the time.
Read a book by Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman, you're owner of LinkedIn. He's done a couple of books about scaling businesses. I think one's just Blitzkrieg or something, which I haven't read yet because it's not really my sector, but have a look into that because that's what he talks about is you've got an established business, how do you make it Facebook size? If that's your ambition. Your ambition might not be that, but if it is, that check him out because I think he talks
we want to be as big as possible. And I think it's worrying to my mind when I sit with a business owner and they say we're happy where we are. Because I believe once you try to stabilise and once you try to plateau, you start dying on the vine. Because you stop innovating, you stop looking for good people. That's a scary place to be. I see business owners that say, we're happy now at this level. And then all of a sudden, one of their key people leaves because people can sniff. Your people know when you're ambitious. People want to be in a growing, moving, ambitious company. And I think it's very important. You never want to work for someone that's a lifestyle business. You never want to work for someone that's happy where they are because that business is going to die.
A lot of those, sadly, are family-run businesses. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have is there's a great ceiling because the chairman or the father doesn't want to go any bigger, and that's
unless the chairman's Rupert Murdoch.
That's true. Right. So wrapping up, I've got a couple more questions for you. So tell me about your marketing boot camp that you've got in London.
Yeah. So I quickly established that you need multiple products to be really successful in any space. And the more that you can give to your audience and your customer base, the better, because people are hungry to learn, not only to have successful work with your products, but they want to learn themselves. And when I work in a sector like marketing that people can do themselves, if you're not going to do the work for them, why not educate them on how to do the work? That was my theory. So I have a big conference at the start of every year called ClimbCon. ClimbCon is for thousands of people, and it's like what's happening now in digital marketing. You know, Comic-Con in the UK, what's happening in comics? Well, this is what's happening in digital marketing. It's called ClimbCon. Well, this year we had Lord Sugar speak, we had Piers Morgan, amongst a host of other people. Oddly enough, Piers Morgan has the most engaged Twitter account in the UK. So he was a relevant guest. He spoke about building up his Twitter following and his Instagram following. It was really a fascinating talk. Next year, we've even got a more amazing guest. Is
it free or is it?
It's a paid event, but it's very low cost. I think you can enter in at 40 quid, which is...
Well, I only say because for us in technology, there's a thing that marketing Microsoft do an event every year in December where they talk about tech, and to be honest, the morning is a bit tough because it's all about selling their Microsoft products, but when you get into they break off into groups,
Okay.
and you have the big event, which is the morning, and then at the last thing at the end of the day. But in the middle, you've got targeted like small events, like probably about 30 or 40 in each, different breakout areas.
That's awesome.
And you can get very targeted things that are very specific to different industries, different
Got
types.
it.
So my point is it's interesting because Microsoft obviously is a huge business, but still find the need to build up that rapport in the industry.
Amazing.
By having a free event. And they've had Bill Bryson, they've had I can't remember who was there last year. And they always have at the end a sort of keynote speaker, and to be honest, it's a little bit awkward because you've got someone like the CEO. It's not always the CEO, but talking to someone like Bill Bryson who knows nothing about technology, but equally the interviewer is trying to weave in things to do with technology, and they are. Yeah,
it's a bit of an ambiguous link.
It is, but it's great. It's the only cringe bit of it, but the reason why I mention it is because it's low cost, but it's targeted. You can go in and you can, from a corporate environment or from a startup environment, you can very much delve into something very specific. So I was very interested, like cost, because you can make, like Rob Moore does it cost. Does courses for £1,000, £3,000, £5,000.
Yeah, he does.
And so I was interested where you were sort of pitching yourself.
So we've tried every model. Free is a bad model because you get the wrong audience.
Yeah.
You get people who aren't serious about being successful.
Yeah.
I do it not to make money. I lose money, significant money on the gate versus what it cost me to put on the event. But I get the right person there. Yeah. It's more important to be talking to the right room of people rather than, if you don't want to pay £20 to £40 to come and take your business to the next level, you're probably not going to get to the next level anyway. So we just kind of move you to one side. Yeah. Once you're prepared to spend, £20 to £40 to come into the gate, we will help you with your business. So we don't sell anything on the day. There's nothing you can buy on the day except a ticket to the boot camp. Right. That's the only. There's no selling. There's no profiteering. Nothing. None of this stuff. If you like what you see, but what it is a lot of motivation. It's huge amounts of motivation. Very famous speakers from all around the world that are at the top of their game. But what some people want is from that bit up to go, okay, I get everything that they've said, but how do I use it for my business? Yeah. What the boot camp does is you spend 2 to 3 days with me personally, and I look at your business and we take it to the next level. Right, okay. So it's a personal, immersive experience.
Do you expect?
I only take 30. Oh, right. You have to apply. You can't just come. You apply. So we had, I think, something like 57 applications. Right. We've accepted at the moment 21. We'll take another 30 in. And I work with them for 2 to 3 days. We have Google come, Facebook come, Instagram come, and we just work with them. Yeah. It's very cool. Yeah, and it's very specific. Yeah. So people will come with no idea where the strategy is. No, they're business owners, entrepreneurs, and marketing department managers. Right. Okay. It's 1,400 quid. Okay,
but that gives you a big cross-reference of people. Because in a way, you're kind of collecting data on the market as well, aren't you? By doing that, you're adding a lot of value to all their businesses, which is fantastic. But actually, you get nice insight into where people are.
It's amazing. And by the way, if you think you're good at business, go and try and put on an event for 1,000 people. It is tough, particularly in London. I was speaking to one of the most famous marketers in the world. They said their hardest market to put an event on is London. Oh, wow. Their hardest, because competition for events here, you can go to the O2 and see Adele sing. Yeah. You can see Alan Sugar, Piers Morgan, Mark Wright, Grant Cardone, Gary Vee, or I can go and see Kings of Leon, and it's all 40 quid. Right. Because but if in Leeds, they might get Richard Branson speak there once ever. So you put a Richard Branson there, it fills the room. Yeah. You do it in London, they're like, I'll see you next Wednesday. He'll be back. And he said London is just too good of an environment where we're so spoilt for choice and entertainment on a daily basis that you kind of just like, well, Rob Moore, he does an event every month. I'll go and see his next one. He'll have a special offer. That sort of thing. And it's a really good point, I thought. But boy, is putting on an event in this country.
And how involved do you get in that?
Very.
Oh, right. Content as well as?
I write all my own content. I write all the content for the boot camp. I do all the main talks. I did 3 keynotes at ClimbCon. I interviewed each person.
Right.
I had to learn 9 bios, 9 backstories. I can't read while I speak, so I have to learn it all by heart. Okay. I learned Piers Morgan, Lord Sugar's whole life stories off by heart. It was pretty intense stuff. Yeah. So a lot of preparation goes into it, but the net benefit for the brand of the company has been significant.
Yeah. Events is definitely it's slightly off subject, but musicians, for example, they now don't get big contracts these days. You have to fight for it out in Spotify and various other places. But where they keep on making money is gigs and concerts, because you get your target audience and you get them there, and then you sell your merchandise and things
this
like that.
Is it. So for us, we lose money on the event.
Right.
And people that tell you they can make money on events are probably lying, because I'm talking about in London, the venues are just insane. A room that fits 1,000 to 3,000 people is a lot of money. AV is just as expensive as the room, and then you've got
so important to drive all of that as well, isn't it?
It's the most important for the experience, because the worst thing you could do is put on a bad event for 1,000 people and get 1,000 bad reviews. You can end a company that way. So what we do is we lose money on the event, but what we unlike a concert, we now have 1,000 leads.
Yeah.
That's,
so you get all their data.
Get all the data. Yeah. We go and speak to them about products and services.
Yeah.
We now have helped them with their business, and they generally become customers. So, but do you know why I beat everyone else in the market? Is because no one's got the balls to go and spend 150 grand on an event. I do.
Right.
So, you go and see one of these other meathead digital marketing agencies say, give me 150 grand. They probably don't have 150 grand. Yeah. I spent that in like a couple of hours on ClimbCon.
Wow.
But I've probably made $1 million off it. But people, they see the short-term pain, the short-term out.
They don't see the return on investment.
Exactly.
Right, last question.
How are we doing? This is always we smashed it.
Smashed it a lot longer than I think you were expecting.
What have we done? Wow.
Well, now we're 25.
Okay, you're the new Joe Rogan.
So my last question is a very open question for you to think about. So what do you want to still achieve in business?
I want to help as many people as possible. I believe now I've made enough money. I've got a fantastic business and brand name. I'd love to do more, obviously, but I want to help as many people as possible. I love doing what we're doing now, the podcast and the public speaking. I find that I've managed, how many people would love to be mentored for 5 years by Alan Sugar? To fly around the country and speak with Grant Cardone, to meet all of the people and be mentored by the people I have. It's a pretty special experience, and I find it my duty to go and tell people, even if they don't listen, like the goals, I'm still going to tell you what I've learned, and hopefully, or if I can help and change one life or create a Mark Zuckerberg from hearing our stuff, that's pretty good. I would love to take my companies over £100 million.
Right.
I would love to employ over 200 people here. And I'd love to sell one of my businesses one day. I've never sold a business, so I'd love to sell. I'd love to go abroad, but my goal is to serve as many people as possible from what I've learned. And you'd be so surprised when you have the intention of helping others, how successful you become as a byproduct.
How easy it is as well. Once you've got the passion to do that, as you say, it is a virtuous cycle.
Yep.
You get involved in helping people, they help you, or something leads on from that conversation that you had. It's just. So this is one of the reasons why I do this, is so I'd make very little monetary, as we discussed before, but the amount of goodwill and the amount of people that I've met, that I've stayed in contact with, is just fantastic. It's given me too many opportunities for my
Isn't that amazing?
Exactly.
And look right now, so what is it, 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Both of you and I have worked full days.
Yeah.
Who would be crazy enough to be sitting here at 8 o'clock at night instead of being at home with their families or whatever it might be, talking about business? You'd have to love it.
Yeah.
So we're doing this because we love it, and we genuinely want to help people. And I think people can sense that. This isn't lunchtime on a Monday. This is a late night, and I would do this at midnight.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Awesome. And I told you the optimum time is 1 hour 30, 1 hour 28.
There we go.
That's a master.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. Speak to you soon.